The question for decades was, well, where did the body go? The podcast is out. People are watching Ruben Flores and Susan Flores and Paul Flores. Suddenly, major pieces of evidence came forward.
Hello Mysterious family, welcome back to Mysterious Mariam. Today's video is a part 3 for Kristin Smart case. I'm gonna link part 1 and 2 in the description, so make sure to go through them before you watch this video. Let's get started. In March of 2013, Paul Flores was working in a Coca-Cola bottling plant in Downey, California. His job was in the lab mixing ingredients. Paul spooked out an anonymous female colleague by weird comments and stares. He would tell her that he would take her for the drinks and take care of her when she gets drunk and spend the night. She complained her supervisor and also made an official harassment report against him. Few days after that, she saw a show coming on the TV in the break room, and that show was about the disappearance and murder of Kristin Smart. No one at the company before that knew that Paul Flores was involved in a missing person case. Couple of weeks later, he was fired from his job. Immediately after Paul Flores got fired, people started talking about the disappearance and murder of Amberly Hill. Amberly Hill disappeared on January 9th, 2007 after her night shift at the plant. She was working at the same position as Paul Flores during the same shift as him at a different plant. Amber's decomposed body was later found in the wilderness. Although this murder was associated with her being a potential witness in a sexual harassment case at the company by the newspaper, her case has never been solved. People at the plant, after finding out Paul's involvement in Kristin Smart case, started associating him with the disappearance and murder of Amberly Hill. Even though Paul started working that job in 2008, Paul has never been officially associated with this case though. In 2016, the FBI excavated a site on the edge of the college campus on a hillside about half a mile from where Kristin was last seen, with the hope of discovering her remains. San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office spokesperson said that FBI officers discovered items of interest but did not say what they were. Lambert is a songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and a podcaster. Lambert was 8-year-old when Kristin Smart went missing. He used to see this girl on the news. It was something scary for him, and people around him were talking about it pretty regularly. So this missing girl unconsciously stayed in his mind all his life. 22 years later, he decided to do a Google search on the case for updates. When he couldn't find any recent stories about the case, he decided to do something. He decided to retrace missing Cal Poly student Kristin Smart's last known steps. Even though he had never investigated anything before, Chris quit his job to create a podcast about the case. He began looking into what happened to Kristin, collecting articles, documents, chasing down the leads, and tracking down anyone with information. He didn't know how many people were gonna listen, but he knew that he could try to do a small part. He released the podcast Your Own Backyard, which focused on Kristin Smart's disappearance beginning on September 30th, 2019. Chris traced back to the party Kristin Smart attended on the night of May 24th, where Paul Flores was seen in the same party carrying a strange Tupperware with a strange drink. He traced down a substantial eyewitness, an Australian exchange student who saw two students struggling with each other at 2 a.m. on May 25th. While cycling from the library to his dormitory, he saw a male 5 feet 10 inches tall, medium built, clean shaved, a typical university student. The other student was a girl, taller than the guy, with the shoulder length hair. They both were struggling, facing each other with their arms above their head in front of Cheryl's hall. Unfortunately, he did not come forward immediately after the news of Kristin's disappearance was out, as he had to go back to Australia and he didn't want to stay in the US any longer. He was actually contacted by San Luis Obispo Police Department to go to the local police station and record a statement. He was never contacted again. Lambert also elaborated the 16 hours gap between Paul's alibi from 2 a.m. to 6 p.m. of May 25th. 16 hours. 16 hours are more than enough for a person to kill someone, bury their body, and get rid of the crime scene evidence. Chris brought the police a number of witnesses that they were interested in.
I brought them a number of witnesses that they were very interested in. I also also brought them witnesses that they had no interest in whatsoever. And then months and months later, they'd reach back out and say, can you get us in touch with this person again?
Chris traced Paul Flores' life in the years leading up to his arrest and found evidence that he allegedly and more victims. This podcast reignited interest in the case. People once again started talking about Kristin Smart's disappearance and her possible murderer. People in the neighborhood started to keep an eye on Flores' family. Renewed public interest led to a new billboard in James Murphy's front yard in January 2020 to replace the old faded one which had been up since 1997. He also featured the sheriff's department in his podcast to discuss the work they did from 2011 to 2020. And for the first time, people found out how efficiently sheriff department was working on this case since Ian Parker joined the office. They served 18 search warrants, conducted physical evidence searches at 9 locations, re-examined every piece of physical evidence seized in the case, submitted 37 pieces of older evidence for modern DNA testing, recovered 140 pieces of new evidence, conducted 91 person-to-person interviews, wrote 364 supplemental reports. On January 18, 2020, the FBI informed Smart's family that additional news about her disappearance would be coming and the family might want to get away for a while, but did not prove any specific information. However, on January 22, 2020, a correction was issued that the FBI did not contact the Smart family. Rather, a retired FBI agent who had been in contact with the family for years was the source of the advice. On January 29, 2020, the San Luis Obispo Police Department confirmed that 2 trucks owned by Ruben Flores had been taken in as an evidence. On February 5, 2020, search warrants were served for specific items of evidence at 4 different locations, 2 in San Luis Obispo, Ruben and Susan's house, 1 in Washington State, and at Flores' home in San Pedro, Los Angeles. On April 22, 2020, a second search warrant was served at the home of Paul Flores in San Pedro. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department assisted detectives from San Luis Obispo County Sheriff Department in the search. It was reported that numerous items of interest were successfully found during the search. Among the items found in the search were homemade videos showing Paul in the acts of and being young, intoxicated women, and also various digital devices including mobile phones, computers, and tablets. Now, obvious question is why digital devices are the items of interest? Neither mobile phones nor computers were too common in 1996. Well, Chris Lambert had the answer. A podcast naming Your Own Backyard made Flores' family to talk about the disappearance of Kristin Smart with each other on their mobile phones and computers. Around 10 months later, on February 11, 2021, Paul Flores was arrested by the Los Angeles Police Department in California on the suspicion of being a felon in possession of a firearm. A month later, on March 15, 2021, a search warrant was issued to search Ruben Flores' home, including the use of cadaver dogs and ground penetrating radars. Forensic physical evidence was located. According to a county probation bail report, biological evidence was found under Ruben's deck. An important tip came in after a February 2020 search of Paul, Susan, and Ruben's properties. 4 nights later, strange activity was seen at Ruben's house. An eyewitness actually documented the fact that throughout the night there was an activity in the area of underside of that deck. That witness initially came forward to Chris Lambert, who passed the information to Sheriff's Office and James Murphy. Murphy alleges, along with Ruben, there were 2 other unnamed individuals. He said they are Ruben's ex-wife Susan and her boyfriend. The lawsuit claimed they were moving Kristin's remains. The location where all this activity occurred is where they found the biological material, and the body was not there now. On April 13, 2021, then 44 years old Paul and his father, 80 years old Ruben Flores, were taken into custody. Paul was charged with the murder and Ruben was charged with being an accessory after the fact in the murder of Kristin Smart. Nearly a week after their arrest, father and son both pleaded not guilty in San Luis Obispo County Superior Court. Paul Flores remained in jail without bail. Ruben Flores was able to post bail after a judge agreed to lower the bail amount from $250,000 to $50,000 to his ex-wife, Susan Flores. He was required to wear an electronic ankle bracelet. Investigations later concluded that Paul Flores attempted Kristin based on his behavior at the night of May 24, 1996. Although Dan Dow, district attorney of the county of San Luis Obispo, stated that statute of limitation has expired on a charge, but murder committed in the course of a are attempted justified first-degree felony murder charges. In September 2021, a judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence of guilt for the case to proceed to trial. The trial was set to begin on April 25, 2022, but was delayed as a change of venue motion by defense was granted on March 30th. The trial for Paul and Ruben Flores was moved to Monterey County after a San Luis Obispo judge ruled that they would not stand a fair trial in the same community where Kristin disappeared. The opening argument finally began on July 18, 2022. Chris Lambert produced postcards summarizing the proceedings on a near weekly basis. Deputy District Attorney told jurors during the trial that search for Ruben Flores' house turned up soil samples that tested positive for human blood. In documents filed in the case, a sheriff's office detective stated, investigators are in possession of biological evidence that made them believe that victim was buried underneath Ruben Flores' deck at one time. Prosecutors believe the father and the son moved the body to another location before authorities searched the property. Archaeologists working for police in March 2021 found a soil disturbance about the size of a cascade and the presence of human blood. The blood was too degraded to extract a DNA sample. A neighbor reported strange activity with a trailer in the yard in 2020. The prosecutor told jurors that was when father and son moved Kristin's remains as investigators made new inquiries about the property. One of a fellow Cal Poly student told the court that Paul Flores had hunted Kristin Smart for months. He had frequently appeared where she was, including her dormitory. The weekend that Kristin went missing, the prosecution said the whereabouts of neither Paul Flores nor Ruben Flores could be verified. But Paul Flores called his father for 7 minutes the morning after the event. He knew the one person who would help with a dead girl on his bed was his father. It was his version of a 911 call. Cheryl Anderson, a student who walked with Smart and Flores from the party back to the campus, testified that she saw Paul Flores leading Kristin toward his dorm, Santa Lucia Hall. Anderson also testified that she was creeped out by Paul Flores, but she didn't think anything horrible was going to happen to Kristin. Jennifer Hudson, 44 years old, told in an interview that she met Paul Flores in the backyard of a home in San Luis Obispo, California in the summer of 1996, not long after Kristin Smart vanished without a trace. Jennifer was 17 at the time. She was watching her boyfriend skateboard when a public service plea from local police came over to the radio asking for anyone with the information about Kristin's whereabouts to come forward. Jennifer claimed that Paul said to her he either buried her or put her under a skating ramp at his place in Huesna. So startled with Paul's remarks and even more disturbed by the dead-end look in his eyes when he said it, Jennifer got up and left the party, signaling her boyfriend to come with her. A few weeks would pass, yet Jennifer did not report Paul to the police, apparently worried he would come after her next if he found out she had said anything. It wasn't until she had her son, when she gave birth to him, in her head, she started picturing him as Kristin and how her parents must have been over the moon when Kristin was born that they were bringing home this perfect little human. Then just one day she was gone. Jennifer admired Smart family's resolve, insisting she had held someone at a gunpoint to find out the information if her son went missing. Paul and Ruben Flores were tried together. They each had separate juries. After a 3-month trial on October 18, 2022, the separate juries found Paul Flores guilty of first-degree murder and father Ruben Flores not guilty of accessory after the fact. Ruben Flores was facing a maximum sentence of 3 years in jail and Paul Flores is facing 25 years to life in prison. Paul Flores was scheduled to be sentenced on December 9, 2022, which is now postponed until March 10, 2023. Kristin Smart's father, Stan, addressed the press shortly afterwards.
Without Kristin, there is no joy or happiness in this verdict. After 26 years with today's split verdicts, we learned that our quest for justice for Kristin will continue. This has been an agonizingly long journey with more downs than ups, but we are grateful and appreciate the diligence and energy of the two juries to thoroughly review the facts and reach their decisions.
Sheriff Ian Parkinson of St. Louis Obispo County said that the case would not be over until Miss Smart's remains are found and she is returned home. The Smarts keep the memory of their daughter alive through Kristin Smart's scholarship. Its goal is to help young women pursue their hopes, ambitions, and impact the world in the same way Kristin had hoped. Kristin's disappearance resulted in state legislation including the Kristin Smart Campus Security Act, a bill which requires all public colleges and publicly funded educational institutions in California to have their security services make agreements with local police departments regarding cases involving or possibly involving violence against students, including missing students. The bill was passed unanimously by the California state legislature and was signed into law. So what did this case taught us? A single person's effort, whether it was Chris Lambert, Ian Parkinson, Denise Mohan, every single person's effort is significant to help serve the justice to a victim. This case is not closed until Kristin is brought home, but remember, don't hesitate trying for these victims until justice is served. This is where I will wrap this case up. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked my effort. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye.